The proposal. Jacob Williams sat quietly in the lavishly furnished boardroom, his hands resting on the polished oak table, polished to a mirror finish. He was about to present a bold new proposal, an initiative designed to push his luxury retail chain, Lux Avenue, towards a new era of inclusivity. As the founder and CEO, Jacob had overseen the brand's meteoric rise to prominence, building it from a single boutique into an international empire. But despite its success, he couldn't ignore the glaring lack of diversity and inclusion within the company's ranks. Today was his attempt to address it. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp rays across the faces of the executives seated around him. Each of them was an influential figure within the company, many of whom had been with Lux Avenue from the start. They had seen Jacob's journey from an ambitious young entrepreneur to the successful businessman he was today, but they had always regarded him as somewhat of an enigma. He was respected but distant, admired but rarely understood. Today, he hoped to change that. "Thank you all for joining me today," he began, his voice steady but laced with a hint of tension. "I'm excited to share a vision I believe will not only set us apart in the luxury retail industry, but also reflect the values we claim to uphold as a brand." He scanned the room, noting the expressions on each face. Some seemed interested, others indifferent, and a few appeared outright skeptical. This was expected. Lux Avenue's board was not known for embracing change willingly, especially when that change challenged their perceptions of what luxury and exclusivity should look like. "Inclusivity," he continued, his voice growing firmer, "isn't just a trend or a buzzword. It's a responsibility, a commitment to acknowledge and appreciate the diversity of our clients and the people who walk through our doors every day. Today, I'm proposing a policy that will place diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront of our company culture. It's time we reflect our clientele not just in our products, but in our people." The silence in the room was palpable, interrupted only by the soft hum of the building's air conditioning. Jacob continued, presenting statistics, studies, and a carefully crafted proposal that laid out his vision. He emphasized how a more diverse and inclusive workforce would not only enhance the brand's image, but also foster innovation, broaden their customer base, and elevate the workplace environment. But as he spoke, he could sense the underlying resistance from some of the executives. Their expressions remained unmoved, arms crossed defensively as they exchanged glances with one another. He knew what they were thinking. Why change a formula that was already working? One of the executives, Darren Mitchell, an older man with silver hair and a reputation for his conservative views, finally broke the silence. "Jacob, I understand the intent behind this," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "But Lux Avenue has always been about exclusivity. Our clientele expects a certain experience, one that we've cultivated over the years. Won't these changes risk alienating that base?" Jacob felt a flash of frustration, but he kept his expression neutral. He knew this question would arise, and he had prepared his answer. "On the contrary, Darren, this proposal isn't about diminishing the Lux Avenue experience. It's about enhancing it. Our clientele is changing. They're younger, more diverse, and socially conscious. If we don't evolve, we risk becoming irrelevant to the very people we want to serve." The discussion continued, with other executives voicing similar concerns, their arguments rooted in the belief that change might compromise the brand's identity. Jacob tried to appeal to their logic, emphasizing how luxury and inclusion could coexist, but it was clear that his words fell on deaf ears. By the end of the meeting, the board hadn't agreed on anything, each executive leaving with their doubts intact. Left alone in the boardroom, Jacob felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. He had entered the meeting hopeful, convinced that Lux Avenue's leadership would see the value in his vision. But the reality was stark. They weren't ready to embrace the change he wanted to champion. Their reluctance stung, reminding him of the prejudice he had faced so often in his life. Despite being the CEO, he was still an outsider in some respects, a feeling he had come to know all too well. As he sat there, memories of his childhood came flooding back. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to remember. He had grown up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, a neighborhood known for its rich history and strong sense of community, but also for the struggles that came with being black in America. His family hadn't had much, but they had always taught him to value education and hard work. He could still recall the whispered remarks, the sidelong glances, and the assumptions people made about him based on his skin color. He remembered the times he'd been followed in stores, the extra scrutiny he endured as a young black man who dared to dream of something bigger. The path to success hadn't been easy. After years of setbacks and closed doors, he had finally founded Lux Avenue, pouring his heart and soul into the brand, determined to create a legacy that would defy stereotypes and break barriers. Yet even as the company flourished, he knew there were issues within the culture that he needed to address. Today had been his first attempt to do just that. He opened his eyes, looking out the window at the bustling streets below. The world had changed in many ways since his childhood, but some struggles remained the same. Discrimination wasn't always overt. Sometimes it was buried beneath layers of subtlety and tradition, hidden behind phrases like brand identity and client expectations. But Jacob knew better. He had seen the damage it caused, felt the weight of it in his own life. This setback didn't mean he was going to give up. If anything, it only strengthened his resolve. He had come too far to be silenced by resistance. He remembered the faces of those who had come before him, who had fought for justice and equality in ways big and small. He thought of his mother, who had always believed in him, encouraging him to chase his dreams no matter the odds. He thought of the friends he had lost along the way, people who had been denied opportunities because of the color of their skin. Jacob stood up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He was more than just the CEO of a luxury brand. He was a trailblazer, a symbol of resilience. Lux Avenue was his, and he would do everything in his power to ensure it became a company that stood for something greater than profit and prestige. The rest of the day was filled with meetings and appointments, but Jacob's mind was elsewhere, contemplating his next steps. Later that evening, as he left the office and walked out onto the street, he noticed a young black man browsing the display in Lux Avenue's storefront. The man wore a humble outfit, nothing like the usual clientele who frequented the store. He watched as the man took a tentative step inside, looking around with a mix of awe and apprehension. Jacob felt a pang of recognition. He saw himself in that young man, the same curiosity, the same desire to belong in a world that didn't always feel welcoming. As he turned to leave, he saw one of his store managers, a stern-faced woman named Rebecca, watching the young man with a hint of disapproval. She approached him, her demeanor cold, her voice stern. "Excuse me, sir, may I help you with something?" she asked, her tone suggesting anything but hospitality. The young man hesitated, clearly taken aback by her attitude. Jacob watched from a distance, a mix of anger and sadness welling up inside him. This was exactly the kind of behavior he was trying to eliminate with his inclusion policy. He couldn't ignore it. He had to act. With a determined stride, Jacob re-entered the store, making his way over to the manager and the young man. The air grew tense as Rebecca realized who he was, her expression shifting from authority to one of anxious respect. "Good evening, Rebecca," Jacob greeted her calmly before turning to the young man with a warm smile. "Welcome to Lux Avenue. Please, let us know if there's anything you'd like to see." The young man's eyes widened in recognition, clearly surprised that the CEO himself was welcoming him. Jacob's gesture wasn't just about making one person feel welcome. It was a statement, a reminder that this store was for everyone, regardless of their background. As he spoke to the young man, Jacob felt a renewed sense of purpose. Change wasn't going to come easily, but he was ready to fight for it, just as he always had. Confronting resistance, the following morning, Jacob walked into his office with a sense of calm determination. He knew that changing Lux Avenue's culture would require more than a single meeting or a hopeful proposal. The resistance he'd faced from the board had only confirmed what he'd suspected for some time. Lux Avenue's leadership had grown comfortable in their ideas of what luxury should look like. If he wanted to make meaningful change, he'd need to prepare for a long uphill battle. And Jacob was no stranger to challenges. As he settled at his desk, his assistant, Clara, entered with his schedule for the day. She had been with him since the beginning, a trusted friend and confidant who understood both the business and the heart behind it. Clara was one of the few people who knew about the obstacles he'd faced over the years, both as a black man in a predominantly white industry and as someone who dared to dream bigger than others thought possible. "Good morning, Jacob," she greeted him, her voice soft but filled with encouragement. "How did the meeting go yesterday? I noticed the board left pretty quickly." He took a deep breath before responding. "As expected," he said with a sigh. "They didn't take well to the idea of an inclusion policy. It was as if I were asking them to dismantle the brand itself, not expand it. I know change is uncomfortable, but this resistance feels deeper." Clara nodded, her expression understanding. They're used to the world operating a certain way. It's not easy to shift perspectives when people have built their identities around certain ideas. Jacob knew she was right. Lux Avenue's board members were people who had lived comfortably within the traditional boundaries of the luxury industry. They valued exclusivity because, to them, it meant prestige, wealth, and power. Inclusivity, on the other hand, was a concept they barely understood, much less embraced. "Still," Jacob said, his voice resolute, "I won't let their discomfort dictate the future of this company. I know where I want to take Lux Avenue, and I'll keep pushing until they see that this isn't just about profit. It's about purpose." As Clara left to prepare for his first meeting of the day, Jacob leaned back in his chair, allowing his thoughts to wander. Memories of his first store opening came flooding back. He remembered the skepticism he'd faced from investors who doubted that a young black man could make it in high fashion. He recalled the looks of surprise when he explained his vision of combining quality craftsmanship with modern elegance, an approach that hadn't been done quite like this before. He'd fought hard to earn his place in the industry, and he wasn't about to let narrow-minded views hold him back now. Later that day, Jacob received an email from Darren, the executive who had voiced the strongest opposition to his proposal during the board meeting. Darren had requested a private meeting, and though Jacob knew it would likely be a tough conversation, he agreed. He wanted to understand the depth of the resistance and perhaps find some common ground. If he could convince Darren, there was a chance he could sway the others as well. When Darren arrived, his face was tense, his posture stiff. It was clear that he hadn't come to discuss minor details or compromises. Darren was a veteran in the luxury industry and one of the oldest members of the board. He had been a crucial part of Lux Avenue's growth in its early days and held a strong influence over the other executives. "Jacob," Darren began, wasting no time, "I want you to understand that I respect what you've done with this company. You've built something remarkable, something people admire. But this proposal, it's a step too far. Lux Avenue has always represented exclusivity, sophistication, and yes, tradition. An inclusion policy feels contradictory to our brand identity." Jacob held his gaze steady, listening carefully. He understood where Darren was coming from, but he also knew that tradition could be both a strength and a chain. It could hold people together, but it could also keep them stuck in outdated ways of thinking. "Darren," Jacob replied calmly, "I'm not asking us to abandon our identity. I'm asking us to evolve it. The world is changing, and our clients are changing with it. Inclusivity doesn't weaken our brand. It strengthens it. It shows that we're forward-thinking, that we understand and respect the diverse world we live in." Darren's frown deepened. "But does our clientele even want this? The people who shop at Lux Avenue, they're not exactly concerned with social issues. They come here for an escape, for a taste of exclusivity that most people can't afford. This inclusion policy, it feels like it's going to dilute that experience." Jacob took a breath, choosing his next words carefully. "Darren, you're right that people come to Lux Avenue for an experience, But that experience is about more than just exclusivity. It's about feeling valued, respected, and part of something special. Imagine if we extended that experience not only to our customers, but also to our employees. Imagine if Lux Avenue became known not only for luxury, but also for compassion, empathy, and respect. That's a legacy that goes beyond profit. That's the kind of impact I want us to make. The tension in the room was thick, but Jacob could see a flicker of contemplation in Darren's eyes. He knew this was an uphill battle, but he could also see that, deep down, Darren cared about the company and its future. He wasn't just resisting for the sake of resisting. He was trying to protect what he believed made Lux Avenue unique. Jacob respected that, even if he disagreed with Darren's approach. "Look, Jacob," Darren said, breaking the silence, "I know you want to do what's right, and I appreciate that. But I still have my doubts. This is a risky move, and we've worked hard to build this brand. Changing the very foundation of what we stand for. It's going to take a lot to convince me. And frankly, a lot to convince the others as well." Jacob nodded, acknowledging Darren's concerns. "I understand, Darren. This isn't something I'm rushing into lightly. I've thought about this for a long time. I've seen the impact that inclusivity can have, not only on a brand but on the people who work within it. If we're going to stay relevant, we need to evolve. Luxury isn't just about exclusivity anymore. It's about leading the way, setting an example for others to follow." Darren left the office, his expression unreadable. Jacob knew that he hadn't won him over completely, but he had planted a seed. And sometimes, that was all it took. He couldn't force the board to agree with him overnight, but he could keep pushing, keep showing them the value of the vision he held so deeply. As the day continued, Jacob found himself once again reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the friends and mentors who had guided him, the community that had supported him, and the family who had instilled in him a fierce determination to rise above. He remembered the conversations with his mother, who had always encouraged him to stand up for what he believed in, even when it meant facing adversity. Her words echoed in his mind as he steeled himself for the challenges ahead. In the evening, he returned to the store, feeling the need to reconnect with the people who made Lux Avenue what it was. He spoke with the store associates, took time to listen to their experiences, and observed how they interacted with customers. He could see the potential for change, the opportunity to create an environment where every employee felt respected and valued. He could see the pride in their faces, the pride that came from being part of something meaningful. As he walked around the store, he noticed the young man from the previous evening. This time, the young man was dressed more confidently, his eyes scanning the racks with interest. Jacob approached him with a warm smile, introducing himself as the owner. The young man's eyes widened in surprise, and they struck up a conversation. "I never thought I'd see the day when someone like me could feel at home in a place like this," the young man admitted, his voice tinged with a mix of wonder and gratitude. Jacob nodded, understanding all too well. "I want Lux Avenue to be a place where everyone feels welcome," he said, "not just the people who look like they belong, but those who've been told they don't. You have just as much right to be here as anyone else." The young man's expression softened, and he shook Jacob's hand firmly, his gratitude evident. For Jacob, this was a small victory, a reminder of why he was fighting for change. It wasn't just about profits or policies. It was about people, about creating a space where everyone felt seen and valued. As Jacob left the store that night, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead was daunting, and he knew he would face resistance, but he was ready. For every person like Darren who doubted his vision, there were others who would see its value, who would stand by him as he redefined what luxury could mean. This wasn't just about Lux Avenue's future. It was about leaving a legacy that would inspire others to dream, to push boundaries, and to believe that true luxury lay not in exclusivity, but in inclusivity. Breaking barriers. Jacob arrived at the Lux Avenue headquarters early the next morning, his mind buzzing with plans. His conversation with Darren had been sobering, yet he felt emboldened, more determined than ever to challenge the company's deep-seated beliefs. He had spent the night contemplating the next steps and decided he needed to take bolder action. It was no longer enough to wait for the board to come around. He needed to start making changes within the company itself, to show rather than tell them the potential of his vision. He started his day with a meeting with Clara, who had sensed a shift in his energy. She knew him well enough to see when he was gearing up for something big. "Good morning, Jacob," she said, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "You look like a man on a mission." Jacob gave her a small smile. "I am, Clara. Yesterday's conversation with Darren made me realize that I need to lead by example. I can't just keep explaining why inclusivity matters. I need to show them. I'm going to start with the hiring process." Clara's eyes lit up with understanding. "You're talking about bringing in more diverse candidates, aren't you?" He nodded. "Exactly. Lux Avenue has always had a certain look when it comes to our staff, especially in our high-end stores. That needs to change. I want people of different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives to feel like they belong here. And that starts with us opening the doors a little wider." Clara leaned forward, her voice soft but supportive. "You know you're going to face resistance. Some of the store managers are very set in their ways, and they're used to recruiting staff who fit a certain profile." Jacob's gaze hardened, but he kept his voice calm. "I'm prepared for that. We'll start by rolling out training programs for all store managers, focusing on unconscious bias and inclusive hiring practices. And I'll be personally overseeing the recruitment process for some of our key stores to make sure this message is clear." Clara's face softened, a look of admiration in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Jacob. You're not just changing a policy, you're changing a culture. That's no small feat." They spent the rest of the morning planning, working on strategies for the new hiring initiatives. Jacob wanted this change to be more than a token gesture. He wanted it to be woven into the fabric of Lux Avenue. He was convinced that by bringing in new voices and perspectives, he could prove the value of inclusivity and demonstrate that it would not detract from the brand's luxury image. That afternoon, Jacob met with his human resources team to outline his vision. He made it clear that he wanted job postings to reach a broader audience, connecting with organizations that promoted diversity in the workplace. They discussed collaborating with historically black colleges and universities, as well as women's and LGBTQ+ organizations, to attract a wider pool of talent. The HR director, a tall, composed woman named Linda, listened intently as Jacob shared his goals. She had been with Lux Avenue for over a decade and had seen it grow from a single boutique to an international brand. She was intrigued by Jacob's ideas, but also cautious. "Jacob," Linda said, choosing her words carefully, "this is a bold move, and I'm with you. But you know how some of the managers feel. Lux Avenue has always been positioned as a certain type of brand. There's a risk that they might feel this shift threatens the exclusivity that they believe our clientele expects." Jacob nodded, acknowledging her concerns. "I understand, Linda. But I also know that if we stay rooted in the past, we'll be left behind. Our clients are evolving, and so must we. Inclusivity doesn't mean sacrificing our brand identity. It means expanding it. It means recognizing that luxury and diversity can coexist." Linda considered his words, then gave him a small smile. "I can see that you're not going to back down on this. I'll support you, Jacob. I'll work with the managers, help them understand that this is a necessary evolution. Lux Avenue is about quality and elegance, and that doesn't have to come in one form." Jacob felt a sense of relief and gratitude. Linda's support would be instrumental in implementing these changes, especially given her influence with the managers. With her by his side, he felt a renewed sense of confidence. Together, they began drafting new recruitment guidelines, emphasizing the importance of diversity and inclusion as core values for the company. As the day drew to a close, Jacob received a message from Rebecca, the store manager he'd observed with the young black man earlier in the week. She wanted to discuss the recent changes he'd mentioned and requested a private meeting. Jacob knew this conversation might be challenging, but he was determined to address her concerns directly. The next morning, Rebecca entered his office, her demeanor professional but reserved. She had worked for Lux Avenue for years and was known for her keen eye and dedication to maintaining the store's image. However, Jacob could sense an unease in her, an unspoken resistance to the changes she anticipated. "Thank you for meeting with me, Jacob," Rebecca began, her voice careful. "I wanted to discuss the new hiring initiatives you're planning. I understand the need for inclusivity, but I have some concerns about how it might impact our store." Jacob nodded, inviting her to share her thoughts. She continued, "I've always believed that our clientele appreciates a certain image, a certain level of refinement in our staff. Lux Avenue is a luxury brand, and with that comes a level of exclusivity. I worry that if we change that too drastically, we might lose the appeal that draws people to us." Jacob took a deep breath, choosing his response thoughtfully. "Rebecca, I appreciate your dedication to the brand, and I understand where you're coming from. Lux Avenue has always been about luxury and elegance, but that doesn't mean we can't embrace diversity. People from different backgrounds bring new ideas, unique perspectives, and a richness that only enhances our brand. Luxury isn't about looking the same. It's about offering an experience that makes everyone feel special." Rebecca's gaze softened slightly, though her expression remained cautious. "I see your point, Jacob, but there's a fine line. The people who shop at Lux Avenue, they expect a certain experience. I just want to make sure that experience remains intact." Jacob leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Rebecca, luxury is evolving. Our clients are not just looking for exclusivity. They're looking for authenticity, for a brand that resonates with their values. Inclusivity is part of that evolution. It doesn't diminish our elegance. It enhances it. Lux Avenue can be both exclusive and inclusive, and I'm committed to making that vision a reality." Rebecca took a moment to process his words, her expression thoughtful. "I respect your vision, Jacob, and I'll do my best to support these changes. I want Lux Avenue to succeed as much as you do. I hope you're right." Jacob gave her a reassuring smile. "Thank you, Rebecca. I believe in this, and I believe that together, we can make Lux Avenue a place where everyone feels valued." As Rebecca left, Jacob felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. He knew there would be more difficult conversations, more challenges to face, but he was ready. He was planting seeds, and with time, he believed they would take root. Later that week, Lux Avenue held a training session on unconscious bias for the store managers and executives. Jacob attended, wanting to lead by example and show his commitment to the cause. The session was eye-opening for many of the attendees, some of whom had never considered the impact of their biases on hiring and customer service. They engaged in discussions about inclusivity and shared their experiences, both positive and challenging. Slowly, he could see the beginnings of understanding, the realization that inclusivity didn't mean the loss of luxury. It meant the enrichment of it. Following the training, Jacob visited one of the stores to see the changes in action. He noticed the store's atmosphere was different, more welcoming, and diverse staff members interacted with customers in ways that felt genuine and sincere. Lux Avenue was beginning to reflect the world it existed within, and Jacob felt a surge of pride. As he walked through the store, he saw an older woman, a frequent customer, speaking with a new employee, a young woman of South Asian descent who had joined the team only a week prior. The conversation was warm, filled with laughter and genuine engagement. It was a small moment, but it was everything Jacob had hoped for. Lux Avenue was becoming a place where diversity was celebrated, where luxury met humanity. Standing by the display window, Jacob felt a quiet satisfaction. The path he was forging was not easy, but it was necessary. Lux Avenue was more than a brand. It was a movement, a reflection of resilience, strength, and hope. And for the first time, He felt that the company he built was finally becoming the company he'd always envisioned, a place where everyone could belong, a place where luxury meant more than wealth and status. As he left the store, Jacob knew that there was still much work to be done, but he was ready for it. He had seen the future, and he was determined to lead Lux Avenue into it, one step at a time, breaking barriers and building bridges along the way. Seeds of transformation. Jacob's changes at Lux Avenue began to ripple through the company, sparking curiosity and sometimes even skepticism. A few weeks after the initial rollout of the Inclusivity Hiring Initiative, the mood in the office and stores had shifted. Some employees felt inspired by the shift toward a more inclusive workplace, while others felt uncertain, wondering if the brand they knew was beginning to lose its identity. Jacob was aware of this internal tension, and he understood that transformation came with discomfort, but he was prepared to face the discomfort head-on. To further strengthen his case for inclusivity, Jacob organized a company-wide event, Lux Avenue's first-ever Cultural Appreciation Day. He invited employees, store managers, and board members to celebrate the diversity within their teams and explore the rich backgrounds that each person brought to the brand. It was a bold step, and he knew some would view it as too progressive for a luxury brand. But Jacob was convinced that by experiencing the impact of diversity firsthand, the Lux Avenue community would begin to understand why he believed in this new direction. The event was held at a grand ballroom in one of New York City's most historic hotels. As guests arrived, they were welcomed by a vibrant display of art installations, interactive stations, and culinary experiences representing various cultures from around the world. Jacob had collaborated with artists, chefs, and performers from different backgrounds, bringing together an immersive experience that was luxurious yet inclusive, blending style with stories from diverse communities. He wanted Lux Avenue's leadership to see, hear, and feel the richness that inclusivity brought, hoping it would bridge the gap between theory and experience. Darren, the senior executive who had expressed concerns about inclusivity, arrived with a wary expression. He was accompanied by his wife, a polished woman who seemed equally uncertain about the evening's agenda. As they walked through the exhibits, Darren's skepticism was visible. He scanned the room, taking in the colorful displays and watching employees and guests mingle, some dressed in traditional attire representing their heritage. It was unlike any Lux Avenue event he had ever attended, and though he still had his doubts, he couldn't deny the energy in the room. Jacob noticed Darren's arrival and made his way over, greeting him with a warm smile. "I'm glad you could make it, Darren. I know this is a bit different from our usual events, but I wanted everyone to experience what inclusivity can bring to the Lux Avenue brand." Darren nodded, his expression neutral but polite. "It's certainly unique. I can see you've put a lot of thought into this." Jacob chuckled, sensing Darren's hesitation. "I have, and I understand that it might feel unusual. But luxury can evolve, Darren. Tonight, I want everyone to see that inclusivity doesn't take away from what makes Lux Avenue special. It adds to it." Darren's wife interjected, her curiosity evident. "Jacob, I must admit, I wasn't sure what to expect. But it's beautiful. It's different, but in a good way. This." She gestured around at the colorful decor, the diverse crowd, and the smiling faces. "Isn't something you often see in the luxury world. It feels fresh." Jacob smiled gratefully, appreciating her open-mindedness. "Thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Lux Avenue can be luxurious without being exclusionary. We're not losing our identity. We're expanding it." As the evening continued, Jacob invited a guest speaker to the stage. Marisa Alvarez, a well-known advocate for diversity in the corporate world and a former luxury brand executive. Marisa was a Latina woman with a formidable presence, and she had made waves in the industry with her powerful voice for change. She had built her career in a similar space, and her experience brought a sense of gravitas to the event. As Marisa spoke, sharing her journey as a minority in a predominantly white industry, the audience was silent, hanging on to her every word. She recounted the challenges she faced, the microaggressions, the doubt that people cast on her abilities simply because she didn't fit the mold of what they thought a luxury executive should be. She spoke of the resilience it took to prove herself repeatedly, despite her credentials and talent. And as she spoke, Jacob saw something he hadn't expected. He saw Darren listening intently, his expression contemplative, as if he were seeing the industry through a new lens. Marisa ended her speech with a powerful message. Inclusivity doesn't weaken a brand. It strengthens it. True luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about excellence, and excellence knows no boundaries. The future of luxury is not just in exclusivity, but in embracing the beautiful tapestry of humanity that makes up our world. When we bring different voices to the table, we not only grow as a brand, we grow as people. The audience erupted into applause, and Jacob felt a swell of pride. He knew Marisa's words resonated with many of the people in the room. Darren's reaction, in particular, was a small victory. Jacob had seen a shift in his expression, a look of understanding mixed with introspection, as though he was beginning to grasp what Jacob had been trying to convey all along. After the speech, attendees mingled, exploring the different stations and engaging in conversations that felt more open and personal than any Lux Avenue event had before. Darren, surprisingly, approached Jacob with a thoughtful expression. "Jacob," Darren began, his voice softer than usual. Marisa's words struck a chord. "I've never thought of luxury in that way before. Maybe there's something to this that I hadn't considered. I've been so focused on tradition that I never thought about what we might be missing out on by keeping things the same." Jacob's eyes met Darren's, gratitude filling his voice. "Thank you, Darren. That means a lot. Tradition is valuable, but innovation is what keeps us alive. If we want Lux Avenue to thrive, we need to keep pushing the boundaries of what luxury means, and I truly believe that inclusivity is part of that evolution." Darren nodded slowly. "You're right. I still have my reservations, but tonight opened my eyes a little. I see what you're trying to do, Jacob, and I want to understand more. Maybe I've been looking at this the wrong way." Jacob felt a surge of hope. He knew that Darren's support would be instrumental in winning over the rest of the board. Tonight's event had planted a seed of understanding, and though it would take time to grow, he felt confident that the foundation for change was beginning to take root. As the evening came to a close, Jacob walked through the ballroom, thanking guests for attending. He observed employees from different departments laughing, talking, and exchanging stories about their backgrounds and experiences. The barriers that had once divided them felt like they were starting to dissolve. For the first time, Lux Avenue felt like a true community, a place where differences were celebrated rather than hidden. The next day, Jacob met with his leadership team to discuss the success of the event. Clara, who had helped organize it, was beaming with pride. "Jacob, the feedback we've received has been overwhelmingly positive. Employees are saying they feel more connected to the company, like their identities are being recognized and valued," Clara said, her voice filled with excitement. Jacob nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "That's exactly what I wanted. We need to keep building on this. This can't be a one-time event. It has to be part of our DNA." They began planning follow-up initiatives, including cultural workshops, mentorship programs for employees from underrepresented backgrounds, and a series of internal events to promote ongoing dialogue about diversity and inclusion. Jacob wanted every employee, from the top executives to the newest hires, to feel that they had a voice in Lux Avenue's future. A few weeks later, Lux Avenue launched an internship program targeted at students from diverse backgrounds, providing them with mentorship and the opportunity to gain hands-on experience in the luxury industry. Jacob felt a swell of pride when he saw the program applications pouring in, knowing that he was helping pave the way for a new generation of talent who might not have seen themselves represented in this world otherwise. Over time, these initiatives began to reshape Lux Avenue's culture. Employees felt a renewed sense of pride, and customers noticed the difference as well. Lux Avenue was not only a place of elegance and exclusivity, but also one of warmth and inclusion. Jacob received letters from clients who praised the brand's new direction, sharing stories of how Lux Avenue's commitment to inclusivity resonated with them personally. One particular letter from a longtime customer stood out to Jacob. It was from a woman named Elise, who had shopped at Lux Avenue for over a decade. She wrote, "Dear Jacob, I've been a customer of Lux Avenue for years, and I wanted to reach out to express my gratitude. I've watched your brand grow and evolve, but nothing has touched me more than the steps you're taking to make Lux Avenue a place where everyone feels seen and valued. As someone who has often felt out of place in spaces like these, I can't tell you how much it means to see your commitment to inclusion. You're not just changing a brand, you're changing lives. Thank you." Jacob read the letter in his office, a wave of emotion washing over him. It was a reminder that his efforts were making an impact, that his vision was resonating beyond the walls of his boardroom. Lux Avenue was more than a luxury brand now. It was becoming a symbol of resilience, progress, and transformation. He leaned back in his chair, a sense of fulfillment settling over him. There was still much work to be done, but he knew he was on the right path. Lux Avenue was no longer just his creation. It was a legacy, a testament to the power of inclusivity, courage, and the belief that true luxury was, ultimately, about embracing the beauty of human diversity. For Jacob, this was only the beginning. He was ready to keep building, to keep pushing, and to keep leading Lux Avenue toward a future where luxury was not just about exclusivity, but about the profound richness of inclusivity. He knew it wouldn't always be easy, but he was prepared to face every challenge with the same resilience that had brought him here. After all, true transformation was never simple, but it was always worth it. Rising tides. A few months after Cultural Appreciation Day, Lux Avenue was undergoing a transformation that reached every corner of the brand. The internal culture was evolving, the employees were more engaged, and the diversity within the staff brought a renewed sense of energy. Jacob felt a deep sense of pride in watching his vision unfold, yet he knew the changes weren't without their challenges. In many ways, the shifts he had implemented felt like they had just scratched the surface of what was possible. Now he was preparing to introduce another bold initiative, one that he knew would make waves inside the company and within the luxury retail industry as a whole. The Lux Inclusive Initiative, his newest project, was designed to go beyond hiring and mentorship. Jacob wanted to transform the customer experience itself, making it not only a luxurious one, but also a welcoming, inclusive journey for anyone who walked through the doors of Lux Avenue. He wanted customers of all backgrounds to see themselves reflected in the brand and feel that they belonged. To achieve this, he planned to roll out a series of changes, from the way they marketed their products to the types of items they showcased. The first step in this initiative was the creation of the Lux Collective, an advisory board made up of individuals from various backgrounds: designers, cultural experts, community leaders, and advocates of diversity in luxury spaces. Their purpose was to guide Lux Avenue on incorporating inclusivity not just as a marketing tool, but as a core principle embedded in the brand's identity. Jacob knew he couldn't accomplish this alone, and he wanted voices around him who would challenge his perspectives and push the brand to new heights. One of the first meetings of the Lux Collective took place in the brand's flagship store in New York. As the members gathered, Jacob looked around the room and felt a surge of excitement. The group was a reflection of the diversity he wanted to see in Lux Avenue. There was Rima, a jewelry designer from India who specialized in traditional techniques combined with modern aesthetics. Miguel, a social entrepreneur from Mexico who had developed sustainable fashion practices. Leela, an art historian and Black cultural expert with an eye for underrepresented talent. And Kenji, a Japanese-American fashion curator known for his avant-garde approach to style. "Thank you all for being here," Jacob began, his voice resonating with conviction. "The Lux Collective is about more than just advising on new trends or strategies. It's about helping Lux Avenue become a brand that champions authenticity and inclusivity at every level. You each bring unique insights, and together, we can create something that redefines luxury. Rima spoke up, her tone thoughtful. Jacob, I appreciate what you're trying to do. But I think it's important to recognize that luxury has traditionally excluded certain people and narratives. If we want Lux Avenue to be truly inclusive, we have to dig deep and be willing to challenge the very foundation of what luxury means. Jacob nodded, absorbing her words. You're absolutely right, Rima. Lux Avenue has always been about elegance and quality, but I want it to mean more than that. I want our brand to be seen as one that celebrates all stories, not just those that fit the traditional mold. The group spent the day brainstorming ideas for how Lux Avenue could shift its approach. From redesigning storefronts to reflect diverse aesthetics, to launching a campaign that showcased customers and employees from different backgrounds. Lila suggested highlighting designers from marginalized communities by giving them a dedicated platform within the store to showcase their work, while Miguel proposed a partnership with artisans from around the world to create exclusive, ethically sourced products. Jacob felt a sense of validation as the meeting continued. These weren't just cosmetic changes, they were foundational shifts that would transform Lux Avenue into a brand that celebrated humanity. By the end of the session, the Lux Collective had generated a roadmap filled with initiatives that would take the company's inclusivity commitment to a new level. The first campaign under the Lux Inclusive Initiative launched 3 months later. Titled Reflections of Us, the campaign featured customers, employees, and designers from various backgrounds, each sharing their personal stories and connections to Lux Avenue. Shot in a range of settings, from bustling urban streets to serene natural landscapes, the photos captured the essence of luxury through a diverse lens, emphasizing the idea that beauty, elegance, and style transcended race, culture, and background. The campaign was a groundbreaking moment for Lux Avenue. But Jacob knew it was also a risk. The luxury industry wasn't known for embracing diversity so openly, and he was aware that some clients might view the changes as a departure from the brand's traditional identity. Yet he was ready to face the consequences because he believed in the purpose behind his vision. One afternoon, just days after the launch, Jacob received a call from Darren. Since the Cultural Appreciation Day, Darren had gradually come around to supporting Jacob's initiatives, though he remained cautious about how much they could alter the brand's image without alienating core clientele. But Jacob could tell from his tone that this call was different. Jacob, Darren began. I've been getting some calls. A few of our longtime clients are concerned. They think we're straying too far from what Lux Avenue stands for. Jacob took a deep breath. He had expected some backlash. What exactly are they concerned about? Darren sighed. They feel that the campaign is too much of a statement, that we're trying to be something we're not. They've always seen Lux Avenue as a space apart from, well, from the realities of everyday life. Jacob felt a spark of frustration, but kept his tone calm. Darren, Lux Avenue isn't just a space for escape. It's a place where people can feel beautiful, valued, and included. If we ignore the realities of the world, we become outdated, disconnected. Luxury is evolving, and so are the people who buy it. Darren was silent for a moment before replying. I understand your point, Jacob, and for what it's worth, I'm starting to see the vision. But I just thought you should know. Jacob thanked Darren and hung up, feeling a mixture of resolve and weariness. He understood the concerns of their longtime clients, but he wasn't going to compromise his vision. Lux Avenue's journey toward inclusivity was bigger than the opinions of a few traditionalists. It was about creating a space for everyone to feel like they belonged. In the months that followed, the Lux Inclusive Initiative continued to grow. The Reflections of Us campaign attracted attention from the media and garnered positive responses from a new, younger clientele who appreciated the brand's bold stand. Lux Avenue's social media pages were filled with messages of support, people sharing their excitement at seeing a luxury brand that represented them. The flagship store in New York, even saw a significant increase in foot traffic as new customers drawn by the campaign flocked to experience Lux Avenue firsthand. Jacob was particularly moved by a message from a young woman named Anna, who shared her story on the Lux Avenue Instagram page. Anna was a first-generation college graduate from a low-income neighborhood, and she had always felt out of place in high-end stores, fearing judgment for the way she looked or dressed. But after seeing the reflections of this campaign, she decided to visit Lux Avenue for the first time. In her post, Anna wrote, "Walking into Lux Avenue was like walking into a place where I felt accepted for who I am. I saw people like me on the walls, in the photos, and in the smiles of the employees. It made me feel like luxury isn't just for the wealthy or the elite. It's for anyone who wants to feel special. Thank you, Lux Avenue, for giving people like me a place to belong." Jacob read her post, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. This was why he had pushed so hard for these changes. He wanted people like Anna to feel that Lux Avenue was a place where they could see themselves, a place that transcended the exclusivity luxury brands often perpetuated. Yet, despite the successes, Jacob's vision was not without its internal struggles. A small but vocal group of Lux Avenue employees, particularly those who had been with the brand from the beginning, continued to resist the changes. They saw the shift toward inclusivity as a dilution of Lux Avenue's elite reputation. Some even worried that their high-profile clientele would abandon the brand, feeling that it no longer catered to their rarefied tastes. Jacob addressed these concerns head-on, holding open forums with employees to discuss their fears and frustrations. He listened as they expressed their concerns, empathizing with their loyalty to the brand's legacy. But he also reminded them of the bigger picture, that Lux Avenue was setting a new standard for what luxury could mean in the modern world. By the end of each forum, he could see some minds beginning to open, even if hesitantly. In an effort to bridge the gap, Jacob implemented a new training program called the Lux Inclusivity Experience. This program offered immersive experiences designed to help employees understand the importance of diversity in luxury. It featured guest speakers, interactive sessions, and role-playing exercises that encouraged empathy and respect for different perspectives. Slowly, the resistance began to soften. Employees who had once viewed the changes with suspicion were beginning to understand the value they brought to the brand. One day, as Jacob was leaving the New York store, he saw Darren talking to a young employee who had recently joined as part of the Lux Inclusive Initiative. They were laughing, and Jacob noticed the ease in Darren's posture, the openness in his expression. It was a small moment, but it symbolized the journey Lux Avenue had embarked upon, a journey of growth, understanding, and transformation. Standing outside the store, watching the diverse customers and employees moving in and out, Jacob felt a sense of peace. Lux Avenue was evolving in ways he had only dreamed of, and the brand was stronger for it. It was no longer just a luxury retailer. It was a symbol of inclusivity, resilience, and innovation. He knew the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges, criticisms, and obstacles. But Lux Avenue was becoming a brand that stood for something more, a brand that was redefining what luxury could mean for a new generation. And Jacob was ready for whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that Lux Avenue's tide was rising. And with it, so were the people it touched. A new legacy. As Lux Avenue entered its new era, the transformation sparked by Jacob's vision became a defining story within the luxury industry. What had once been a conventional luxury brand now stood as a model for inclusivity and innovation. Jacob's journey had not only reshaped Lux Avenue, but also challenged the industry's perception of what a luxury brand could represent. However, as with any groundbreaking change, there were still trials to be faced, and Jacob knew that sustaining his vision would require continued commitment and resilience. One of the biggest tests came when a prominent fashion magazine invited Jacob for an in-depth feature on Lux Avenue's transformation. The interview promised to reach a global audience, offering Jacob the perfect platform to explain his vision to both loyal customers and potential detractors. The magazine, known for its traditional take on luxury, had been a longtime supporter of Lux Avenue's earlier image, and Jacob understood that his new direction might clash with their conventional views. Nevertheless, he accepted, prepared to share Lux Avenue's new identity with unflinching honesty. The interview took place at Lux Avenue's flagship store in Paris, a location that symbolized the brand's origins and where its transformation felt the most profound. The magazine's editor, a refined woman named Celeste, was known for her sharp wit and high standards. She greeted Jacob warmly, but with a glint of skepticism in her eyes, as if she was still deciding whether his vision was a bold evolution or a risky departure. Jacob, Celeste began as they settled into a luxurious, sunlit corner of the store. Lux Avenue has long been a hallmark of exclusivity and sophistication. Some might say that your focus on inclusivity challenges that very definition of luxury. How do you reconcile these seemingly opposing values? Jacob smiled, prepared for this question. I understand that perspective, Celeste. Lux Avenue has always been about offering an exceptional experience, and that hasn't changed. What I believe, and what I hope we're proving, is that inclusivity doesn't dilute luxury. It enhances it. True luxury is about offering an experience that resonates on a deeper level. By embracing diversity, we're creating a richer, more layered experience that speaks to more people and brings the brand closer to the world we live in today. Celeste listened intently, her expression thoughtful. She leaned forward, challenging him gently. Some of your longtime clients have expressed concerns that Lux Avenue's direction might make them feel less unique, less set apart. How do you address that? Jacob met her gaze, his voice steady but impassioned. Lux Avenue isn't about making people feel superior. It's about making them feel extraordinary. I want every customer to feel that they belong here, not because they fit a certain mold, but because they are valued for who they are. The exclusivity of Lux Avenue is no longer about separation. It's about connection. Connecting people with the finest quality, artistry, and design, no matter their background. As the interview continued, Jacob noticed a shift in Celeste's demeanor. She seemed genuinely intrigued, her skepticism giving way to curiosity. She asked about the Lux Collective, the advisory board Jacob had established, and he explained how they were helping Lux Avenue bring authentic representation to the brand. Each member brings a unique perspective, Jacob said, his voice full of admiration for the team he'd assembled. They challenge me, they bring new ideas, and they hold us accountable to our mission. Lux Avenue has become a collective vision, one that's constantly evolving, shaped by voices beyond just mine. The interview ended on a positive note, with Celeste promising to capture Lux Avenue's transformation with integrity and authenticity. Jacob felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that the story they would share would help reinforce his message. That luxury was not a fixed concept, but one that could evolve and adapt to better reflect society. After the feature was published, the article received widespread acclaim. It resonated not only with Lux Avenue's newer, diverse clientele, but also with industry professionals and even some of the brand's older clients, who saw Jacob's vision in a new light. Lux Avenue's social media pages were flooded with messages from people who felt inspired by the brand's journey, sharing how they felt represented and welcomed in a space that had once felt out of reach. However, as the brand's visibility grew, so did the scrutiny. Not everyone embraced the changes, and Jacob faced backlash from a faction of critics who accused Lux Avenue of abandoning the essence of luxury for the sake of trends. Articles surfaced questioning whether Lux Avenue had strayed too far from its roots and if it could sustain its high-end image while being so inclusive. Jacob read each critique carefully, choosing not to ignore or dismiss them. He knew that pushing for change meant facing criticism, and that some people would never accept his vision. Yet he was resolute, confident that Lux Avenue's transformation was both necessary and timely. He understood that change invited discomfort, but believed that the beauty of Lux Avenue's new legacy would be worth it. Amidst this heightened attention, Jacob decided to hold an exclusive event, a celebration of Lux Avenue's new era. He wanted to invite customers, employees, and industry insiders to experience firsthand what the brand had become. The event would feature a live fashion show with models from various backgrounds and body types, showcasing new collections that embodied Lux Avenue's commitment to inclusivity. The event was held in an old converted opera house, a space that felt both grand and intimate, allowing guests to appreciate the elegance of Lux Avenue's designs up close. The room was filled with chandeliers, velvet drapes, and lush floral arrangements, a blend of tradition and modernity that reflected Lux Avenue's evolution. As guests arrived, Jacob welcomed them personally, feeling the surge of pride as he looked at the diverse crowd gathered in the historic venue. When the show began, a sense of anticipation filled the room. The collection was breathtaking, a seamless fusion of classic luxury and innovative design. Each piece was crafted with exquisite attention to detail, showcasing Lux Avenue's renowned craftsmanship while embracing diverse cultural inspirations. As the models walked down the runway, Jacob could see the reaction of the crowd, the mix of admiration and awe on their faces. The collection featured collaborations with artists and designers from around the world, each piece a unique reflection of the designer's heritage. There were intricate beadwork from Kenya, silk embroideries inspired by Chinese art, and bold prints that echoed the vibrancy of Latin American culture. Lux Avenue's classic elements were still there: tailored suits, flowing gowns, and elegant accessories, but they had been reimagined, enriched with global influences that felt fresh yet timeless. The final model to walk the runway was a young woman named Zora, an Afghan refugee and a recent graduate of Lux Avenue's internship program. She wore a gown inspired by the intricate embroideries of Central Asia, paired with a modern silhouette that represented her journey from tradition to empowerment. When she reached the end of the runway, the audience rose in applause, moved not only by the beauty of the collection but also by the story it told, a story of resilience, diversity, and the beauty of inclusion. As Jacob watched Zora's triumphant walk, he felt a wave of emotion. Lux Avenue had become more than a brand. It was now a platform for stories, for people, for communities that had once been overlooked. In that moment, he knew he had succeeded in creating a legacy that was not just his but one that belonged to everyone who had been part of this journey. In the weeks following the event, Lux Avenue experienced a surge of support from both customers and the fashion industry. Jacob began receiving invitations to speak at conferences, participate in panel discussions, and share his journey with other leaders looking to foster inclusivity within their organizations. He accepted these opportunities, believing that Lux Avenue's story could inspire others to rethink what luxury meant in a changing world. One of the most impactful invitations came from a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged youth. They asked Jacob to participate in a mentorship program, where he would work with young people who aspired to enter the fashion industry but lacked the resources and connections to do so. Jacob accepted without hesitation, seeing it as a way to give back and help others overcome the same obstacles he had faced. Through the program, Jacob met a young man named Marcus, who reminded him of himself at a younger age. Marcus was bright, ambitious, and brimming with creativity, but he had been met with countless rejections due to his lack of connections and financial resources. Jacob took Marcus under his wing, guiding him through the intricacies of the fashion industry and helping him develop a collection of his own. Months later, Marcus debuted his collection at a local fashion showcase, supported by Lux Avenue. The collection was a success, receiving praise for its originality and craftsmanship. For Jacob, watching Marcus's journey was a reminder of the power of opportunity, of what could happen when people were given the chance to flourish. Years later, Jacob stood in the lobby of Lux Avenue's headquarters, now adorned with portraits of employees from across the world, a visual testament to the diversity that had become central to the brand's identity. Lux Avenue had grown, with new locations in cities where luxury was often seen as out of reach, bringing elegance and quality to people who had never dreamed they could experience it firsthand. The event was held in an old converted opera house, a space that felt both grand and intimate, allowing guests to appreciate the elegance of Lux Avenue's designs up close. The room was filled with chandeliers, velvet drapes, and lush floral arrangements, a blend of tradition and modernity that reflected Lux Avenue's evolution. As guests arrived, Jacob welcomed them personally, feeling a surge of pride as he looked at the diverse crowd gathered in the historic venue. When the show began, a sense of anticipation filled the room. The collection was breathtaking, a seamless fusion of classic luxury and innovative design. Each piece was crafted with exquisite attention to detail, showcasing Lux Avenue's renowned craftsmanship while embracing diverse cultural inspirations. As the models walked down the runway, Jacob could see the reaction of the crowd, the mix of admiration and awe on their faces. The collection featured collaborations with artists and designers from around the world, each piece a unique reflection of the designer's heritage. There were intricate beadwork from Kenya, silk embroideries inspired by Chinese art, and bold prints that echoed the vibrancy of Latin American culture. Lux Avenue's classic elements were still there: tailored suits, flowing gowns, and elegant accessories, but they had been reimagined, enriched with global influences that felt fresh yet timeless. The final model to walk the runway was a young woman named Zora, an Afghan refugee and a recent graduate of Lux Avenue's internship program. She wore a gown inspired by the intricate embroideries of Central Asia, paired with a modern silhouette that represented her journey from tradition to empowerment. When she reached the end of the runway, the audience rose in applause, moved not only by the beauty of the collection, but also by the story it told, a story of resilience, diversity, and the beauty of inclusion. As Jacob watched Zora's triumphant walk, he felt a wave of emotion. Lux Avenue had become more than a brand. It was now a platform for stories, for people, for communities that had once been overlooked. In that moment, he knew he had succeeded in creating a legacy that was not just his but one that belonged to everyone who had been part of this journey. In the weeks following the event, Lux Avenue experienced a surge of support from both customers and the fashion industry. Jacob began receiving invitations to speak at conferences, participate in panel discussions, and share his journey with other leaders looking to foster inclusivity within their organizations. He accepted these opportunities, believing that Lux Avenue's story could inspire others to rethink what luxury meant in a changing world. One of the most impactful invitations came from a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged youth. They asked Jacob to participate in a mentorship program, where he would work with young people who aspired to enter the fashion industry, but lacked the resources and connections to do so. Jacob accepted without hesitation, seeing it as a way to give back and help others overcome the same obstacles he had faced. Through the program, Jacob met a young man named Marcus, who reminded him of himself at a younger age. Marcus was bright, ambitious, and brimming with creativity, but he had been met with countless rejections due to his lack of connections and financial resources. Jacob took Marcus under his wing, guiding him through the intricacies of the fashion industry and helping him develop a collection of his own. Months later, Marcus debuted his collection at a local fashion showcase, supported by Lux Avenue. The collection was a success, receiving praise for its originality and craftsmanship. For Jacob, watching Marcus's journey was a reminder of the power of opportunity, of what could happen when people were given the chance to flourish. Years later, Jacob stood in the lobby of Lux Avenue's headquarters, now adorned with portraits of employees from across the world, a visual testament to the diversity that had become central to the brand's identity. Lux Avenue had grown, with new locations in cities where luxury was often seen as out of reach, bringing elegance and quality to people who had never dreamed they could experience it firsthand. The walls of Lux Avenue no longer displayed only the faces of models, but also images of artisans, designers, and everyday customers, capturing the vibrant, inclusive spirit that defined Lux Avenue's new era. Jacob knew that this was the legacy he wanted to leave behind, a legacy of transformation, resilience, and the belief that true luxury was found not in exclusivity, but in embracing the beauty of human connection. As he looked out over the bustling lobby, filled with people from all walks of life, he felt a profound sense of peace. Lux Avenue had become more than he'd ever imagined, a testament to the power of vision, courage, and the belief that inclusivity was not a compromise but a strength. Jacob knew the journey would continue long after him, carried forward by the people who believed in the brand, who saw themselves reflected in its story. And as he left the building that day, he felt confident that Lux Avenue would continue to thrive as a beacon of hope and elegance for generations to come, a brand that had redefined what luxury meant in the most human, beautiful way possible.